Hi, my name is Brandon Dixon, co-founder of PassiveTotal, and I now run product for RiskIQ. I wanted to put this video together really quick just to highlight some of the power of the PassiveTotal platform and the data that RiskIQ brings to bear for analysts. Over the weekend, I was taking a look at some threat actor infrastructure that was old. It's what we're looking at right here, Valexi's reporting on Oceanlotus, also known as APT32. This is an example that I use a lot when teaching threat hunting workshops because it's got a lot of interesting infrastructure. These guys were, or these malicious actors were particularly advanced in how they set up their infrastructure. And we were able to find them through a number of different operational security failures on their part, or by virtue of how they set up their command and control operations. So over the weekend, I had noticed that there was some changes to their infrastructure that I had not previously seen. So the reporting that we're looking at here, this particular project, was back in May 2017 of when we saw this reporting happen. And then we had some follow-on work that happened through the end of the year towards that November timeframe. So again, this is something that I use inside of our threat hunting workshops a lot. And what I always key off of is this cookie ID right here for Cloudflare-Ray-UUID. And so this is something that I often like to pivot into, especially when I'm teaching a class, because effectively what it gives me is a list of all of the websites that RiskIQ's crawlers have ever seen getting this particular cookie name. And so what we can see here is a whole bunch of different websites, some of them categorized as non-malicious, some of them categorized as malicious, and then the domain in which this cookie has been delivered through. So for a long time, this health-ray-id.com was one of the major center points or main pieces of infrastructure for these malicious actors. And the short way of how they operated was they would essentially set up this health-ray-id.com and they would redirect a whole bunch of malicious traffic into it. So what I'm looking at here is the results for health-ray-id.com. If we scroll up, we can see for the past 6 months, we haven't collected any data. In other words, like this web server's down, it's no longer being used. But I'm looking at the host pair tab, which shows the representation between these different websites having an association to health-ray-id.com. And so what these malicious actors were doing were setting up typo squatting. They were making themselves appear like popular JavaScript libraries, ad libraries, technologies, content delivery networks, ad networks, etc. And that's how they were blending in. And so what they were doing was they would compromise a website. That website then might get injected with one of these typo squatted domains, which would then perform an AJAX request to this central location where it would help facilitate either the delivery of malicious content or the profiling within the browser. So this was pretty interesting. This infrastructure is not really active anymore, but going back over to that cookie pivot, that was an interesting way in which we could correlate all of the activity from these actors. So not only could we see some of the websites that were compromised and websites that were sort of redirecting or making reference to each other, but we could use this cookie to basically group everything together. So keeping in mind time frames, it was 2017 when we sort of saw all of this come out into the public. And in theory, that should have been enough to stop the operations from taking place. But being, the malicious actors that they are, they're interested in, continuing these operations. We did notice that activity started to pick back up again in January of this year. And so we're now looking at towards the end of June, almost 6 months since the reporting has really come out. And we have a number of new websites here that are available to us. This czdjs.com, statistics.robot.thumbapi.com, and then www.jetthumbs.com. And so what's interesting here is we can essentially infer that these websites are likely to be malicious because they're also delivering this same Cloudflare-Ray-UUID cookie, and that there are also a number of websites that we know were previously compromised that were non-malicious, that were referencing the old infrastructure, and now they're referencing this new infrastructure. So as an analyst, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, these are probably related. Now, another tab that we can click on really quick as well is just looking at the IP address part of the equation. So again, we're seeing these domains come up, and then we're seeing the IP address that was seen delivering that cookie at the time. I'm going to short circuit this process a little bit because there's a lot more IP addresses here than there are domains. And I'm just going to show off a couple of the key findings that I had just by doing a couple of click pivots. So I selectively went after certain IP addresses, and then I clicked on the each of these new domains that I had observed. So I've already preloaded them in the browser. We can see here instantly that we only have about 6 months of history on this particular infrastructure, so it's fairly new. We can see that there's a number of resolutions available to us through passive DNS. If I wanted to, I could pivot on this IP address and identify all the associations. I could also see here that there's a number of certificates that have been associated with this particular infrastructure. This is something that we know these actors used in the past. They favor Let's Encrypt certificates. And so if I wanted to here, I could actually pivot on this common name in order to get any other infrastructure or certificates also referencing this common name. But all these things are sort of telling me, okay, this is probably related to the malicious actors. We could see here from a host pair perspective, we have that AJAX request, which we had seen previously. And we could see that in this particular case, it was this live.wpthemelive.com was actually reaching out to the czdjs.com. So from here, I could pivot on this. I could tell you just from my own analysis that this website is malicious, and it does have a number of other connections to some live operations going on. So we'll click that and let it load. But for now, we'll go over to this statistic.robots.thumb API. Again, another IP address here based out of Singapore. DigitalOcean seems to be the favored virtual server provider by these actors. Again, looking here on the certificate tab, we got another Let's Encrypt certificate, a number of them that are associated with the infrastructure. We have some other subdomains that have previous themes or overlap with what we had seen previously. If we go over to host pairs, we can see reference to this services.content.thumbapi.com, which is worth probing further. And then we could also see this new one where, again, parent AJAX request of bctheme.com. And I'm going to click into that one because I know that that guy is bad. Finally, we'll go over to the JetThumbs infrastructure. Again, a number of IP addresses that have been used here. Some of them already marked suspicious on our side, but a lot more IP addresses and a lot more history with this website. So it may be something that's compromised or recently came up for renewal, and the malicious actors took advantage of that. If I look at the certificates, again, common theme here. We're seeing Let's Encrypt across the board, again, with the common name of jetthumbs.com. If I go into host pairs, we can see another website, this static.icdn.biz, that is, again, making an AJAX request to this particular website. So I'm going to click on that. And now let's actually just go back through and really quick take stock of what we got here. We had the initial cookie that kind of gave us some tips about 3 different domains that were relatively new to us. We had not seen them. They showed up this year, but they did appear to be something that could be associated with the malicious actor. We then went through each one of them and identified a parent relationship to another website that follows kind of the same theme. And now we've pivoted into each one of those. And so what we see here, a number of resolutions I could go after. Let's look at the certificates. Here we go again, more Let's Encrypt. And in this particular case, we have Let's Encrypt certificates showing up with specific IP infrastructure. I'm looking at host pairs now, and I could see a website that we had seen previously compromised, this Vietnamese website. And then we could see some of the profiling activity that exists when this web page is being loaded. And so that's interesting for us. We can identify some relationships. If we head over to this bctheme.com, again, DigitalOcean, let's look at the certificates. Again, Let's Encrypt. Let's go over the host pairs. We got some stuff that appears to be compromised that is making a reference to this bctheme.com. So it looks like there's some websites that are compromised. We're seeing the Facebook Connect interface here. Maybe the malicious actors put the maybe they put their link out on social media as a means to kind of get more people. Let's go over to static.icdn.biz. Okay, we've got another DigitalOcean that we could go after. Again, more certificates. It's a common theme with these guys using the Let's Encrypt certificates with those the different infrastructure. Got a lot more host pairs here, which is really interesting. So we have a parent that's redirecting into this particular set of infrastructure. These are marked as malicious, but that's an erroneous issue on our side. All of these are actually okay. They're probably compromised or referenced in some weird way. But what I can tell you after going through this infrastructure is that this sparkocean.com is something that is malicious and associated with some live operations where the actors are essentially trying to mimic Gmail or make it appear like Gmail is running. And so again, I run a pivot on that. I'm able to see some more DigitalOcean infrastructure. If I were to go to the subdomains here, I can look at, well, we have some host pairs. So nothing new on the host pairs front. But if I go to just sparkocean.com, let's see if we get anything different. So we have certificates, the certificates, reoccurring theme, Let's Encrypt showing up here. Again, more host pairs. Looks like there's kind of self-referencing each other. And again, some more DigitalOcean infrastructure. So I don't want to dwell too much on this particular actor-based infrastructure, but what I think is particularly interesting is that we started off with something we already knew was bad back from 2017. And for me as someone who runs product now, is not necessarily doing the analyst work, I come across this infrastructure by virtue of teaching classes. And I think what's particularly interesting here is that despite being publicly outed, these malicious actors continued with their operations and they continued to use some of the same techniques that they had used previously, which allows us as analysts to essentially uncover all of their infrastructure. And you can see that all I did live, in this video was click around a couple of times. Now, I spent hours on this infrastructure, really building it out completely. And I did a considerable amount of effort to make this video very short, but I didn't really do more than just kind of run all of the leads down. I clicked on all the IP addresses. I looked at all the certificates. I looked at the overlap between them. I looked at the host pairs, and I took stock of the websites that were being used. Ultimately, what that got me to was this project that we have here, where I have 258 artifacts that are associated with these malicious actors. And it's going to cover all different types of content. Cookie domains, SSL certificate common names, cookie names, IP addresses, SSL certificate serial numbers, domains, and SSL certificate SHA-1s. And so this is something where I spent probably 4 hours pivoting around, and I was able to find a number of different websites that were live, literally serving up profiling scripts that would deliver targeting information back to the malicious actors. I was able to find a number of different websites that were compromised. And long story short, I was able to prove that these guys have not stopped in their operations and they're still continuing on despite the public information against them. So again, I wanted to put this video together just because I think it's really powerful to be able to demonstrate these sorts of things. And then any person has the ability to take existing open source intelligence and a platform like PassiveTotal and really leverage the data that we have from RiskIQ's technology to essentially break open this investigation all over again. And so if you have any questions, send us a message. We'd really like to hear from you. This project is public, so you can actually access it yourself. If you want to go and run your own pivots, all that information is available to you. And I would encourage you to do so because it's pretty interesting.